What's up, everybody? You are about to be watching GoJo and Golic. A lot of good stuff today coming up on the show. Obviously, we're going to start talking about the Davante Adams trade. Reunited, and it feels so good. This is no longer a darkness retreat for Aaron Rodgers. And hot seats. Which coaches may be feeling the temperature rising a little bit? We'll get into all that, what they need to do to perhaps keep their seats a little bit cooler, and if some of them can. Plus, Steeler Nation, let's ride. I don't know. Should we? Russell Wilson maybe getting first-team reps to start versus the Jets. We'll talk about all that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here, and we got a great show for you guys. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We got some fun guests coming up today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday here, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Falcons wide receiver Drake London going to join us in about a half hour, talk about the start of their season. Our buddy Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports going to join us off the top of the next hour to talk about the factory of sadness that is the Las Vegas Raiders. And can I just say, guys, if anyone else wants to break any trade news, can you think about doing it between the hours of 8 and 10 a.m. Eastern? How many days are we going to have to turn off the microphones at the end of this show, and then immediately after that, watch everyone else get 24 hours of the same news cycle that we're about to talk about here? It's despicable. Dad, I don't know how you did this for almost 20 years in the morning slots there where you guys have to deal with this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally we got breaking news during the show that was from 6 to 10 in the morning. But for the most part, it was like later in the day. But yes, the absolute worst is right when you turn off the microphones at 10 a.m. Eastern a.m. and news breaks. Everybody gets to talk about it for basically 22 hours before you're on again. We're on again at 8 in the morning before we get to discuss it. Yeah, it's not right. I don't understand it. I wish it just 15 minutes earlier. We can talk about it in the last segment. Just a little taste.
They know.
A little taste.
They wait until our post-show meeting is going on, and then they break the news.
That's awful.
They do. They just want to disrupt our timing here. All we ask, Schefter, Shams, anyone else now passing in the news breaking industry, just like 9:45. It doesn't have to be right at 10:01. 9:45 works just as well. Lets everybody eat a little bit, because yesterday everybody went up and got traded. All the trades that we thought about that were going to happen, Davante Adams to the New York Jets, finally happened. The trade that we didn't even know was going on, it was going to happen, Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills. Basically, Dad, everyone who was involved in Monday Night Football this last week knew the game that we watched was so full of flags and just so ultimately unappealing that they decided they didn't like what we had to see. They didn't like their teams, and they wanted to go get some new wide receivers. So let's start with the Jets one. Davante Adams going from the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders receive a 2025 third-round conditional pick in the trade. It could improve to a second if Adams is a first or second team All-Pro this season or on the Jets' active roster for the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl. He restructured a bit of his deal to bring his cap number down, so it was going from $11.6 million, the prorated amount that they would owe him there, to just $3.21 million with a couple of void years on the deal after that. So, Dad, Davante Adams is finally a Jet. How much does this actually fix for this team?
Well, I mean, it certainly helps. I mean, we have to, as bad as we think the Jets are, the last two losses they had were to division leaders by one score, Minnesota and the Bills, right? So while they're 2-4, the defense is an excellent defense, and by one score, that means the defense is keeping you in games because we know the Jets aren't scoring a lot of points. Maybe that will improve now. It's got to help some, right? I mean, it's a guy's going to turn, 32 in December, so he certainly is getting up there in age. He wasn't what he once was when Aaron and Davante were pitching and catching in Green Bay, but he's still obviously an improvement over what they had. This will sit Mike Williams down, and it'll be a couple of old buddies of Aaron Rodgers, Davante and Alan Lazard, to go along with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So, I mean, it's a pretty formidable group of specialists from running back to wide receiver. So you would think it would help. Now, the O-line has to pull their weight as well. Listen, the Jet, when you're going to, as they say in poker, splash the pot, what does it matter if you splash it with a few more chips? At this point, you are all in on this season. So what's the difference if you go all in plus a little more? Because this may be it. As far as this grouping together, you may get next year possibly, but they're not worried about that. They're worried about this year. Same when we get to the Bills and Amari Cooper. They're worried about this year to do what they're going to do. The Bills have a little more leeway, but for the Jets, this is their time right now to make hay. And yeah, it's definitely going to help them. Is it going to help them enough to where the conditional pick is going to become a second rounder? I don't think so, because Davante Adams is behind the eight ball as far as making first or second team All-Pro. He's only played 3 games and has 18 catches. So that's going to be hard. And they would have to be in the AFC title game or the Super Bowl, and I don't think they're going to be in either. So it's going to be a third round draft pick.
I will say, the success or lack of success of the Jets offense. I did see the stat yesterday that they have scored the same amount of points through 6 weeks this season as they did last season with Zach Wilson at the helm. So that can't make anyone feel good. The difference here, though, Dad, is you're right. Like, it can't hurt bringing in a guy that Aaron Rodgers has obvious history with and a guy who still can play. Like, watching Davante Adams this season, and I saw a number of people, Dominique Foxworth, Ted Nguyen on his show, point out the Baltimore Ravens game that I went back and checked out a little bit of yesterday earlier in the season with the Las Vegas Raiders. Still looked like he had a little bit of juice in there, and I'm sure being around a quarterback that knows him better than anyone else could throwing him the football in the league is going to go a long way into maximizing Davante Adams. But this also isn't the position of need that you think of with the Jets. I understand Alan Lazard, someone who's been relying on there. Aaron Rodgers, which, by the way, the thing that's probably aged worse than this is Aaron Rodgers' public criticism of Mike Williams in the press conference after the game, because as we've heard, this deal was likely in place going into Monday night, already just trying to hammer out the finish line of this. Davante Adams was essentially in the air on an overnight at that point because he arrived in New York that morning on Tuesday. So if you knew that this was going on in the background and went out and said those things about a guy, Mike Williams, who was about to get released, that's pretty foul. So I would hope that's not the version of events here. But if it is, that's kind of a tough one to swallow optically on the back end. But we know Mike Williams, Alan Lazard have been guys that you had been relying on. Alan Lazard was someone Aaron brought in. But Garrett Wilson's coming off his 2 best games games so far this season. So it's not like you were pointing to that position and saying overwhelmingly place of need like you were for the Buffalo Bills and bringing Amari Cooper in. Like that one is more, hey, Buffalo was wholly deficient in this area. They are bringing in someone who, yes, is not without his warts himself, but they're bringing it in an area where they need a massive boots. For the Jets here, there's still, protection. Certain things, quite honestly, with the quarterback and his mobility that aren't receiver related, but will no doubt, listen, have some benefit from a guy of Davante's caliber coming into this room.
This was the best option available. It's not like they were going to bring in an offensive lineman from a practice squad or sitting at home that was going to make as big a difference as Davante Adams can make. So it's difficult to readjust your team. A lot of times you don't get players like Davante Adams available at the trade deadline, though see a couple of years ago, Christian McCaffrey was available, went from Carolina to San Francisco. TJ Hawkinson went from Detroit to Minnesota. So those were some really good moves that had instant benefit. And I think this one and the one we'll talk about in Cooper will have some instant benefit. But this is again, it's desperation by the Jets as well, right? I mean, they've loaded up for this. They have pushed everything to the middle of the table for this. So why not a little more? I mean, why not? I mean, this is your time to do anything, and it couldn't work out better, at least from a we think situation. Davante Adams was one of the best receivers in the league when he was with Green Bay. He's certainly fallen off some, but he's played with Aaron Rodgers. He knows the system. So, I mean, it almost just fits in perfectly to help immediately. So this, I can understand why. And again, we talked about why would Davante Adams want to go there? It's basically a year, but he didn't really have a choice unless he says, I'm going to sit out. So I get the move.
Yeah, the Aaron Rodgers running the team allegations are going to be tougher and tougher to beat with each passing move like this. I'll certainly say that. But the one thing that came to mind, and we'll talk to Fitz about this when he comes on later, because I can't imagine how he's feeling right now. How bad do the vibes have to be around the Raiders facility for this year's Jets to seem like an appealing option? Like, that was my first reaction when I heard this yesterday and I get quarterback is the number one thing at the top of that line item, right? They don't have a quarterback right now in Las Vegas. Davante Adams as a wide receiver kind of needs one of those in order to have success, and he's going to the one that knows him best. I get it from that point, but the Jets had just fired their coach, lost on Monday Night Football. We already told you how many points they scored relative to last year's Jets, and they're the Jets, like historically inept franchise, and that still seemed better than hanging out in that Raiders locker room. So we'll take the temperature with Fitzy on that one, because I'm genuinely curious, like, what the plan is in Las Vegas now, and is Antonio Pierce a part of that going forward? Max Crosby, I think, is too important to that organization as a face of the franchise to really consider moving. But man, if someone throws a monster Godfather offer and you can do a full-scale teardown there, I don't know if Mark Davis has the stomach for that or not, but it'll be fascinating to see. Dad, the other trade that we had yesterday, Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills, this one makes a lot more like apparent need-fitting sense in terms of the Buffalo Bills and where they've been at so far this season. The Bills ranked 25th or worse in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and receiving first downs. And this year, only 3 qualifying quarterbacks are averaging fewer completions per game when targeting wide receivers than Josh Allen is. It's the lowest mark for Allen through 6 games of a season since his rookie year. So it's been a struggle. You know, they just got Khalil Shakir back this last game on Monday Night Football, which helped. You're waiting for Keon Coleman as a rookie to pop in a way that just might not be realistic as the number one option in that offense. And so they bring over Amari Cooper, Dad. They get him for a relative pittance here because of the way that Cleveland restructured his contract before the start of the season, converting the majority of that into a signing bonus, the majority of his $20 million base salary. So he was really tradable. He'll be a free agent next year. So this is basically a 1-year rental for this season. And so you have that on one side, but you pointed out, Dad, the price tag in terms of draft capital, actually a little bit more than Davante Adams.
Yeah. He went for a 3rd-round pick, which is what the Raiders are going to get. I don't see the conditional coming into play. As we mentioned, he'd have to be a 1st or 2nd team All-Pro, Davante Adams, or on the roster for the AFC title game or Super Bowl. I don't see that happening. So if the Raiders get a 3rd, the Cleveland Browns get a 3rd and a 7th. So Amari Cooper, who's a little younger.
It's
He's
the beauty of what
old.
happens when no one actually knows that you want out of a situation and they're not fishing. Like, it sounds like this deal materialized a lot more quickly as the Bills assessed their need at this position.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a team now. Shakir is second to receptions. He's right there with, but Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, leads with 21 receptions and has 10 more targets than Shakir, 31. Now I know Shakir missed a game, but he's got it. So this is a between with Kincaid and Knox, two tight ends. Shakir obviously a weapon. Keon Coleman, the expectation was maybe to come along a little more, but it's not coming along as quick maybe as they would like. So, but you're right. You're in the now moment as well, right? With Buffalo. Now, you're going to have your quarterback longer in Buffalo than the Jets are going to have their quarterback in New York. So you still have time with Josh Allen, but you think you've had, the rosters to do it. You haven't done it. So why not? Why not go, basically, I don't know if this is all in, but add another piece to your puzzle.
I mean, you add a guy who came off a career season last year where he played with 4 different quarterbacks, and one of them was Deshaun Watson. And while this year has seemingly fallen off a cliff, I think a lot more of that is emblematic of what's gone on overall for the Browns there as an offense, where the offensive line foundation's cracked, the quarterback's pretty cooked. I saw this one from Matt Harmon the other day on Football 301 with Nate Tice, courtesy of Fantasy Points data. Over half of Amari Cooper's air yards on his targets have come on inaccurate or uncatchable passes. That offense has been a disaster. And so while his drops have always been a problem, that's what you get with Amari Cooper. And quite honestly, it's what the Bills already have at this point. Bills as a team have the 6th most drops in the league, just behind the Jets at 5th, just behind the Browns at 4th. So it's already going to be built into the model there. At the very least now, Dad, you've got a guy that as recently as last year was a 1,200-yard receiver in this league and was the primary deep threat for the Browns, took on that added role for a lot of last season. And once Joe Flacco came on there, we saw how much that relationship seemed to unlock Amari Cooper. You'll take a few drops there here and now because Amari Cooper just got delivered from evil. He is now gone from the penthouse or the outhouse to the penthouse in terms of quarterback play and the overall health of an offense that's been subsisting without him so far.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's going to be, how quickly can he assimilate to an offense? Because one other trade we had, Cam Akers went from the Texans to Minnesota. He was in Minnesota last year, so he'll assimilate to that offense. Obviously, Davante Adams will be fine in the offense that he ran with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. We'll see how quickly Amari Cooper can adjust to the new offense in Buffalo. That will be the biggest question as they take on the Titans this week and then the Seahawks. So we'll see when he can start to get some time.
I tell you what, my favorite thing about Amari Cooper being back in the news is, and I saw someone reposted this yesterday, but I talked with this years ago on Mina's podcast. Do you know what Amari Cooper's nickname is, Dad, on Pro Football Reference?
I do not know that.
So on Pro Football Reference, they always list these weird nicknames for people. Amari Cooper's nickname is the Route Runner, which has to be the worst nickname on planet Earth. I can't think of and not only is it his nickname on Pro Football Reference, Amari Cooper has a whole website where they sell Route Runners merch online, and the logo is just a big Christmas tree looking version of the wide receiver route tree. So that might be reason why he can come in and have a little bit more success, because when you are the route runner, that means you've got the full depth and breadth of the route tree available to you. So no matter what the Bills ask him to do, Amari Cooper is going to be ready for that.
Why do you hate that nickname? Isn't that a compliment to be the route runner?
I mean, yeah, but is it cool to be called the route runner?
Well, I guess it's not splashy or flashy, but it's efficient. I guess wide receivers want to be more than efficient.
That's what it is, though. It's the tamest nickname for a wide receiver I've ever heard. This position that's usually marked by cryptic tweets and, give me the damn ball and all these different things that we normally associate with the position. This is the most accountant doing their taxes version of wide receiver description that I've ever heard. Yeah,
it definitely is. So who do you think, which receiver helps their team more?
Oh, I think Amari Cooper at the Bills, by far. I think it's a position of desperate. That's the thing, is both of them are good and going to help their team. Only one of them is going to a spot where they are desperately needed, and that's Buffalo.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. And I mean, listen, Garrett Wilson has been playing well. Now it will certainly change coverage for teams to now, as they won't say Garrett Wilson is number 2. They'll say they have 2 number 1s, but it will certainly change coverage but for teams playing the Jets, which could obviously benefit the Jets offense.
Yeah, let's put it this way. That has a chance to be an additive gain for the New York Jets. I think this could be a force multiplier for the Buffalo Bills in terms of going from that position basically being in the background of your offense, almost a non-starter behind the running backs and tight ends, and your quarterback is a part of the run game, where now it has a chance to be featured for a team that's already leading their division. And I get it was by a thin margin going into Monday night, but that's changed very quickly in the last 24 hours.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Another week means another hot-headed moment from Jerry Jones. You love to see it, honestly, I do. He went off during his weekly hit on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, and he did not hold back.
This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I did something and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job.
Well, my job is to ask
why.
why.
A job, or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions, man.
Jerry, we're trying to figure out why the team is.
I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you.
Okay, Jerry Jones now just threatening people's jobs because he doesn't like the line of questioning he's going full like old man yelling at the clouds right now.
That really is like the thing that stood out to me here is Jerry Jones has been at the center of the media circus for a long time. And when things like this happen, all of our first reaction is, oh, there's Jerry just poking the bear again, distracting from the product on the field, trying to make all this happen. But he had a chance later on to explain himself, talking to Diana Rossini, our buddy and senior NFL insider over at The Athletic, and basically doubled down on this. He said, when asked to explain why he reacted the way he did, I don't know that I would go so far as calling the volume connotation as yelling, but the facts are that if I'm going to be grilled by the tribunal, I don't need it to be the guys I'm paying. I can take it from fans. I can take it from other people. I take a lot of pride in how fair and how much I try and work with the media. We're brothers and sisters, but I was a little frustrated there today. We got in there as an accounting for decisions made in this offseason. Okay, they might as well have gone back to the decisions made in 2010. My point is, that's from my perspective. There's no question. I'm sure they would like to have grilled me like the fans are thinking. What are you doing and going to do about that? I get all of that. I really will go along with it. It doesn't sound like he wants to, Dad. It sounds like he's saying the quiet part out loud, which is Jerry wants yes men around him. He wants the people that he's paying, which, is kind of an inaccurate way to describe. 105.3 is the flagship station. Right. For the Dallas Cowboys. They broadcast the games there. And while, yes, that makes the relationship a little bit different, and Dad, you worked in a local market before, so this is not something that's all too unfamiliar for a lot of people in this situation, but still, Jerry's reaction to this, wholly unprofessional.
Well, I mean, and he could have an influence on the people working there, even though he doesn't own the station, but it's a flagship station, depending on the leadership at that station, which I would hope the leadership would say, are you kidding me? I would hope they would back their hosts. And you said Jerry Jones is the center of the media circus, and you know who puts himself there? Jerry. Jerry puts himself there. Jerry puts himself front and center. So, this is like that entertainment person, that actor or actress that loves to promote what they want to promote, but when anything gets fired back at them, they're like, they don't want to talk about it.
Kardashianism.
It's like, no.
Kardashianism.
Yeah. What?
Yep. It's Kardashianism. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't want to be in the middle of the media circus and take on all the questions and then bark at two guys that you're on with every week who are asking you questions everybody wants to know the answers to. And while he's saying that's rehashing, that's going back, tough. When you guys stink the way you do, everything is fair, everything is open. I mean, I really hope that, and I haven't heard anything from that station, that station management is backing those two guys and not telling them to soften up a bit.
I have seen a lot of the other people on air at 105.3 coming out and having their backs and pointing out that, like, Dad, at this point, there's no way Jerry Jones could do anything with how public this has gotten because, man, if you go out now and those guys were to lose their jobs, no matter if Jerry Jones is directly associated with or not, that would be the implication. And now all of a sudden, you would have that stain on your hands as well. So I do feel like they're pretty well insulated and no one there back down, as they shouldn't, Dad. What this is indicative of is Jerry Jones is feeling the heat. Like this, that is the action of a man who is legitimately bothered. Normally, we think of Jerry as, hey, he's fine. No such thing as bad publicity. Like Jesse said, the Kardashianism, which now I'm picturing Jerry Jones with a BBL, and that will haunt me until my dying day. But this is a guy that normally sits in the center of this and just laughs all the way to the bank. He's clearly bothered by this, Dad, and I think you can kind of see the additive property of everything that's gone on with the Cowboys over the last calendar year, the all-in quotes going into the offseason now being thrown back in his face. This guy's on edge and starting to feel the heat as this team that he's built for the last few seasons and one that he balked on adding to this offseason is now crumbling in a way that seemed incredibly predictable.
And there's only one, well, obviously there's coaches and players, but the team that was put together by the man in the mirror, Jerry Jones, has no one to blame but himself for the team he put together. And still, the most egregious thing to me, obviously he doesn't pay his players on time, but he ends up paying them, so they do get paid. But the most egregious thing to me is he did zero for the running game. Zero. I mean, if you can do less than zero, he did less than zero for the running game. And you can talk about Derrick Henry and say he couldn't afford that. There were other running backs available. but he did nothing. And then to say he likes the team he was going into the season with, of what they built. I mean, are you kidding me? You know, an amateur GM could look at that and say, you did nothing for your running game. Nothing. I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and say I predicted this, because there are many that predicted this, that they would take a step back, and they're taking a large step back.
There's no doubt about that. This to me, Dad, and that step back, like you said, predictable. The things that he failed to do for this team as the GM, because that's the other part of this, right? It's never just the owner of the Dallas Cowboys talking when this stuff happens. No. It's the GM who is responsible, at least in part. We understand his son Steve in there now. There's other people involved in that process. Right. But as Jerry reminds us all too often, I do this because at the end of the day, I'm going to have to okay these checks being signed anyway, so I might as well be the one making the decisions, or quotes he's authored as recently as this last offseason now. But I think the interesting part here is Jerry's in the position that he constantly puts his players in, right? Like making their life difficult in the media and having to answer tough questions. Think about how often Dak Prescott was put in front of the microphone during an unwinnable situation this offseason as he argued on behalf of himself, potentially got ready to face a season where he was going to play with his contract on the line on the other side of it, and just smiled and worked through it and definitely worked through all the Jerryisms and laughed about it with us there. And now Jerry Jones is feeling a semblance of that heat on the other side because he's the one that loves being on the radio so much. He agreed to go do this interview every week, but now he gets some of that questioning his way about things that are a little bit uncomfortable, and you see the cracks starting to form. So I'd have to imagine, while again, like you said, he eventually pays his players, and by all accounts, the former Cowboys around there, you get taken care of. Like being one of the guys that Jerry Jones has been around seems to be very financially lucrative when you're done. But there's got to be some of this stuff that's matting, and so I'd imagine there's a small part of these guys that maybe cracks a little bit of a smile watching Jerry fold under some of the same pressure they face.
Yeah, there's not total ownership where you go, oh my God, what a failure. The guy has the Dallas Cowboys as the most valuable. Thank you. The most valuable, not just football team, sports team in the world at $10 billion. So the guy, as a businessman, has done a great job, and he does have 3 Super Bowls to his ownership, even though the last one was in '96, but he does have them, and I give a lot of credit to Jimmy Johnson for those Super Bowls. But again, you know, Jerry helped put those teams together, so you do have to give him some credit. But I mean, there's no other owner that's outside the locker room holding court after every game. There's no other owner that has a weekly segment on a radio show. So he's putting himself in that situation to be frustrated and say things that he probably shouldn't. And listen, isn't that what every interviewer wants? They want something said that's going to make the headlines. And I agree. I think these two guys are completely safe, but their stuff's getting heard everywhere now, right?
And listen, 105.3 by nature of having Jerry Jones there benefits tremendously. Having the Cowboys benefits tremendously. Now, I haven't heard the full audio of the questioning in the lead up to that, and so we don't know if it bordered or went to something too far. I'm assuming that audio would have been made very readily apparent by the Cowboys now if that had been the case. But Jerry Jones's point of really never said there was anything wrong with the questioning, and I guess that's why I go back to that. Never said there was anything wrong with what he was being asked. The quote that he gave to Diana Rossini was, "The wrong ones were doing the questioning." Now, if those had been real fans sitting there, or if they had been people that I knew what they were talking about, football people, I might have had a different answer, because that was the other part of the tack that he took that was a little gross, Dad. They were asking these questions, and he's demeaning them, saying, if you geniuses were able to go and fix this, you'd be in the league meetings that I'm about to be in with the other 31 owners. Like, it was not the nature of what was asked. It was the fact that Jerry Jones believes that because he's got financial influence here, he should now not have to face any of the questions that are the questions that fans are asking. Like, those guys are asking the questions that the people that listen to that show and are in that fan base in Dallas. I mean, it's not hard to find. Every Cowboys fan has had the same question for a while. What are we doing? What does all in actually mean? And why do you keep saying it if you were going to make the announcement like you did before the trade deadline that we're not going to be active, that we're going to sit there on our hands? Yeah. If you're Mike McCarthy, you're about the only one, Dad, that's happy with what's been said by Jerry Jones recently, because he said that they're not going to fire you during the season. So Mike McCarthy's walking around right now like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This seems pretty great.
Well, you get the show of support is usually the kiss of death. Doug Peterson got the show of support by Shad Khan as well, the owner of Jacksonville. And sometimes that's a kiss of death because we have money that either one of those guys could get fired during the season. And we're not calling for anybody to be fired. I hate it. I would not want it. But it's part of the equation that things like that happen.
It certainly is. I do want to get to elsewhere because, I mean, the fallout from this is basically just a reminder that, like, Jerry Jones is clearly on edge. And while everyone there has been on their hot seat now, you've got Jerry Jones, who late in his career really seems to maybe be losing a little bit of the grip. And we always knew, like, while I thought this team might be able to salvage more this season, injury and some of the deficiencies in areas they didn't add to have become more heightened earlier in this season. Yep. This was always infinitely possible, given the way you stacked the deck this offseason and the limited margin for error you created around this team in some ways that I get. Hey, listen, you had to pay Dak a lot of money. You had to pay CD a lot of money. You're going to have to play Micah a lot of money. I get all that stuff. There were areas where have been well documented around the margins that you could have gone out and made moves that would have supplemented and helped this football team and didn't. And I thought and said this offseason that in part seemed to at least be a belief by Jerry Jones or an indication from that front office. They only think this team is capable of so much, and they are comfortable if it collapses. That was the message that was sent this offseason and now seems to be received very differently here now that they've gotten to this point in the season. I do want to go elsewhere in the NFC East, though, and just briefly hit on the Nick Sirianni sound here. Came out and apologized on behalf of jawing with a fan in the crowd of the Eagles win the other night. This was their head coach on that late.
What I was really doing, I was trying to bring energy yesterday, enthusiasm yesterday. And I'm sorry and disappointed on how my energy was directed at the end of the game. And, my energy should be all in on coaching, motivating, right, and celebrating with our guys.
I just realized now, and it's because of the buzz cut, he reminds me of Jason Fitz.
Ha! That's not a compliment.
I mean, they're white guys that just got buzz cuts very prominently and are now facing the media with a different look. And Nick Sirianni, Dad, you and I talked about this. I really didn't find this as big a deal once I saw that this was something the players maybe didn't say outright to do, but were like, be yourself. We're better when you're the way that you've been all along here in Philadelphia, whether that's palatable or not for other people.
Right. And the amount of analysts that just ripped him to shreds for doing it. Now, do you want your head coach barking at the fans? Probably not. But if there is a place you can get away with it, and I have personal experience with this, playing most of my career in Philly, is you can buy those fans. I guarantee you weren't mad at Sirianni for barking at him. Especially the one fan actually came out and said he gave me an explanation that you could get away with that in Philly. Now, do you want your head coach doing it? Probably not. But that's the place you can get away with it. So to me, it was not that big a deal.
Yeah, listen, part of it's the body of work. Nick Sirianni is someone that gives us a lot of very memeable content. No, so I'm not surprised that people were dunking on it there. I said he's like a Tim Robbins character coaching an NFL team with a lot of the different extracurricular activities that looks into the camera. He's played it like a pro wrestling character, which, like you said, plays to a very specific audience there in Philadelphia.
Yes.
I don't know if it works somewhere else, and I don't know if we'll get the chance to see that if this team keeps winning. They're a fascinating bunch in the NFC East. Coming up next, let's head south and talk to the top wide receiver on this emerging Falcons team. Drake London joins us next on GoJo and Golic. For our next guest, we've talked a lot about the NFC South on this show, and one of the guys on a team vying for that division and off to a great start with that, Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, kind enough to join us here now on behalf of DirecTV for Business. Drake, good morning, man. How you feeling?
Good morning to y'all. Appreciate you guys for having me on. I'm feeling great.
I mean, I'd imagine you're feeling pretty good. You guys are off to a great start so far this season. You're the leading receiver in almost every category on this squad so far, having a career year. So let's start there for you. Still a guy early on in your career. How different did it feel even going through preseason heading into this year? Kirk Cousins at the helm, new coaching staff, and a new regime in town for you.
Yeah, just the new regime in general. I mean, everybody from top down has been a complete 180, you know. It's been fun to go to work and to go to battle with the guys at hand. The coaches make it truly easy for us to go out there and execute plays and just let us play our game ultimately.
How does Zach Robinson's offense differ from the offense you had last year?
Definitely the football is in the air a little bit more, but there's a lot of versatility as well. You know, using all of our guys, we have Kyle Pitts out there. We got Bijan, Tyler, Mooney, Ray. I mean, I could go on. And then the guy at the helm is Kirk Cousins, somebody who could sling the rock really, really well. So there's just a lot of weaponry out there that we can use to our benefits, and I think he's doing well so far.
For Kirk Cousins, you brought him up there, obviously a huge acquisition for you guys this offseason. How would you describe the impact he made almost immediately coming into the building there as a veteran player with a reputation the way he does around the league?
Yeah, he's just been that guy from the start, you know. He's been that leader. He's put himself in that role, and he's done a tremendous job of just instilling faith in us and honestly going out there and playing ball to our best levels and making us better players, you know. So for that, we thank him, and we want to keep it rolling.
To that regard here, what did you think about the swag surfing effort from him? Because I feel like everyone loves to do the thing where they treat Kirk Cousins like their dad and dress him up with the chains or teach him how to swag surf. Is he really a guy, like, did he have no clue before that game what everyone was doing there with that?
Yeah, I don't think he had a clue what swag surfing was, but I mean, he put his own little flavor onto it, and we love it that he's just immersing himself into the Atlanta culture and what we do here. So just proud that Kirk goes swag surfing, and I hope that he keeps on doing it.
How has it been with an experienced coach and head coach in Raheem Morris and head coach that's more defensive-minded coach?
It's been amazing. I mean, he's out there doing his thing, and honestly, just like Kirkland does, he instills faith in us to go out there and just be the best individual player that we could possibly be, you know. He puts us in the right situation, and for him to have a defensive mind is really cool when he comes to the offensive room and breaks down things for us that maybe we haven't thought of. So he's kind of playing devil's advocate there, and helping us with that sort of thing.
You mentioned all the different weapons that you guys have in that offensive room. Is it tough sometimes for guys, you know, Kyle Pitts at the beginning of the year maybe wasn't seeing the ball as much as fantasy owners certainly all wanted here. How do they go about making sure that everyone kind of gets touches in an offense that has as much talent as we know you guys have had for a while?
Yeah, I think it's just a week in, a week out thing, you know. It's just a matter of time if anybody wants to go out, whether that be Mooney, KP, or Bijan. But at the end of the day, the thing that I love about this team the most is that we don't have any egos and who gets the rock. At the end of the day, we just want to win. And so far we're doing that, so everybody has a smile on their face.
I was going to say, I bet you have a smile on your face. I know there's no egos out there, but it's nice to be the number one guy, isn't it? 54 targets, 38 receptions, basically top five in both. Balls coming your way an awful lot.
Yeah, of course, it feels great to get the ball. At the end of the day, we're wide receivers and tight ends and running backs. And to help the team, we got to have the ball in our hands. if we do that, then we feel good about ourselves. But again, I can't stress it enough. Getting W's is the main thing. We're trying to take it all the way.
We talked about your starting quarterback here. You guys also a unique situation in drafting Michael Penix Jr. in the top 10 of the draft this year as a first-round pick. He's been watching the other picks in his draft go out and get to play already. What's it been like for him behind the scenes, and how have you and him started to forge that relationship for a young guy on this roster that doesn't have to take over that starting role yet?
Yeah, I think it's perfect for Mike in the situation that he's in, especially to learn from a guy like Kirk Cousins is very huge. A lot of guys get thrown into the fire right away, and sometimes they're not ready for it. And some of the best, for example, Tom Brady, he had to sit, and look what he did. So to learn the game and understand the mental side of it a little bit more, the speed of the game, things like that, is going to be really good for him. But, I mean, he's a gunslinger, so we're happy to have him.
You're one of the few teams that has been through your division already, played everybody in your division. You're the only team that's 3-0 in your division. How much of a confidence builder is that?
It's a huge confidence builder. You win your division, you kind of get a ticket to the playoffs, and that's our goal right now. And we see those guys 2 times a year, and we try to just dominate them every time. And, this year we're doing that, and hopefully we keep it going.
No doubt you guys have been one of the great stories the early part of this season. It all seems to be going well, like Dad said, jumping out in the head of the division right now. Also going well for you off the field. You're here with us on behalf of DirecTV for Business. What can you tell us about the partnership that you guys have going on?
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of DirecTV. And honestly, in fact, they actually have a partnership with USC. I know you guys are Notre Dame guys, but
Yeah.
they have a partnership with USC. And honestly, anybody who treats my Trojans like family is family to me. So if you have any more information, or you need any more information, go to directtv.com /for business.
Yeah. How about your Trojans? Tough loss to Penn State. Have a few losses on the board already. No, we haven't played yet. Notre Dame. It's the last game of the season, so we don't have any smack talk yet for you on that. But what do you think of the season so far?
It's a big jump moving conferences, playing new teams that you haven't seen before. There's a lot of traveling involved. But at the same time, I think they're doing very, very well. Miller Moss is at the helm right now, and he's doing a good job. So I can't complain. We just got to get back on track and do the things that we do.
No doubt about it, and certainly Lincoln Riley, a talented head coach who knows all about a lot of winning football, so I have a feeling there are still plenty of bright days ahead. Just, I hope for one of those days to be a little dark at the end of November, but, that's just me. So, Drake, we appreciate the time and all the insight, man. Best of luck. Stay healthy. We're rooting for you. I hope you have a great season, brother.
I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right, good stuff, guys. Let's transition into some Tom Brady news that we got. He has finally been approved to have a minority ownership stake with the Raiders, which comes with new rules that he has to abide by that could make it a little sticky with his broadcast gig. Okay, a myriad rules. I used that correctly. One sticks out, okay? I didn't say a myriad of. I said a myriad rules. So one sticks out. Actually, a lot of these stick out. But talking to you guys about this, so he's not allowed to attend broadcast meetings either virtually or in person. But we talked about this, a little behind the scenes look, because we have some broadcasters here. And you guys told us that's not that big a deal. Actually, it sounds like it's a big deal, but it's actually not.
So it's one of these things, Jesse, where I look at this, and obviously the list of things prohibited here for Tom Brady, Dad, not ideal for the broadcaster on your A crew that's going to call the Super Bowl. If you're Fox and you've ponied up, and everyone knows how much you're paying Tom Brady, and everybody liked Greg Olson, who did a phenomenal job in that chair. Like, all those things are less than ideal. But what are those things really about? They're about providing a level of access to the inside of the product for fans who can't ever get to those spots. So you get to go and talk to coaches and talk to players. And if you see practice and pick up a couple of things that can help inform the broadcast, it's all gravy. Fox is betting that the sum total of Tom Brady's incredibly prolific NFL career and all the experience that he is just a year or so removed from now are going to outweigh all that access for other broadcasters, older broadcasters who who are further from the game. And while Brady's still maybe probably too green to fully realize that, that's the gamble that they're making. And quite honestly, it's one that I can kind of understand.
Oh, yeah, I definitely get it. Listen, the announcers usually go to the place the game is a couple of days early, like sometimes Friday for a Sunday game. They'll go into the facilities. They'll talk to coaches and facilities. If they don't, they'll do it virtually. And Tom can't do any of that. Now, producers will give him notes from the meetings. And those meetings anyway, I mean, there are a number of people in those meetings. So it's not like the coaches and players are giving away company secrets in those meetings. Sometimes it's overkill. But what Tom can do is watch a ton of film without question. And that's really about all he can do. He's getting paid $37.5 million a year to not do a lot of the prep work.
Great gig.
Of that announcers are supposed to do by doing the coaches meetings and by going to practice. He can't do them legally. So he's like, sorry guys, can't do them. But I don't think it will affect, listen, he's just starting in his career. I think he's going to do just fine in his career. And to your point, they're banking on his, 2 decades and tons of Super Bowls and being the GOAT to carry him, not the intricacies of what a coach is going to say, which a lot of times they don't say in the meeting rooms. So I think this is just kind of a win for him, that every announcer is like, my God, he's getting all that money. He doesn't have to go do all the busy work that we have to do.
The reminder, what I always say, man, fair is a place where they judge pigs. You're all going to be treated fairly, but fairly is not the same as the other great coaching line. And for Tom Brady at this point, I mean, he's gone out and he is the greatest winner in the history of the sport at the most important position in the sport. And so it's no wonder that he is getting treated differently. The history of the world is littered with star quarterbacks playing by a different set of rules than most of the rest of us. This will be interesting on the other side, though, Dad, for the Las Vegas Raiders, who now find themselves in an incredibly precarious position where they just made the quarterback switch to Aiden O'Connell. Davante Adams, who wasn't playing for them, now also doesn't work for them in general anymore. And there's a bunch of existential questions about their team. You do bring Tom Brady in at a time where I'd imagine you're going to consult this guy about whatever you're looking for as a quarterback upcoming, either in free agency or in the draft, because you do have a guy who's got an incredibly unique and valuable skill set in that regard there, which is why that you can't have him poking around other teams' facilities, things like that, because you may reap this kind of benefit from having him in the building, and so you can't go and get that intel from everybody else.
I mean, they better ask him and get his thoughts on the next quarterback. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, you have that in your house now to talk to about evaluating a quarterback? I know it's 5% ownership, but it should be 100% or 90% on who the next quarterback should be because, listen, he wants to be involved. He wants to be invested, obviously money-wise, but I think he would love to be involved in some sweat equity. You don't see many 5% owners being involved in the day-to-day, and I doubt he will be. But as far as evaluating a quarterback, I mean, how could you not? How could you feasibly not talk to him and have him involved in evaluating the quarterback that you're going to pick in the draft? It would be absurd. It would be you should be fired. And I know Mark Davis can't be fired, but it would be absurd. So I mean, it's an interesting situation.
It would be funny if Tom had the same kink that like John Elway had when he was manning the helm for the Denver Broncos, and he just drafting quarterbacks that reminded him of himself. Like, is Tom Brady going to fail to have an inability to properly evaluate anybody before the 6th round? Like, if they've got a 5th rounder above grade, is he just going to be like, nah, we're probably good on that. We don't need to reward those guys any more than they've already been rewarded up till this point.
And also understand, remember, John Elway is one of the great quarterbacks ever played, and he struggled finding a quarterback. There's nothing saying that Tom will be able to evaluate and pick the next winning quarterback for the Raiders. We have seen players be GMs and fail at this, so, it's certainly not a lock.
Yeah, sometimes when the standard is you and you are one of the greatest players to ever play the game, it becomes kind of difficult to fit anybody else in that paradigm and make it make sense. So good luck, Tom. Sounds like it's going to be a fun fall for you.
The NFL has announced a new city for the Super Bowl a little further down the line. We already know what's going on for the next couple years. So in 2026, the Super Bowl is going to be in San Francisco. In 2027, it's in Los Angeles. After its little West Coast swing, the Super Bowl returns to Atlanta in 2028. And ATL has quietly become the place to be for sporting events. Their future lineup is quite impressive. Here's what they have on their schedule in 2025. The CFB Championship Game, MLB All-Star Game, FIBA World Cup. In 2026, Atlanta going to be part of the FIFA Men's World Cup, the aforementioned Super Bowl in 2028, and the 2031 Men's Final Four will be held in Atlanta. Safe to say Atlanta is the place to be in the foreseeable future, and this is the place to be because Jason Fitz is going to join us next.
right, hour number 2, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. We'll talk to Rhett Lashley, the head coach of the now AP Top 25 ranked SMU Mustangs. Coming up in about a half hour here. Excited to hear about his perspective. New in the ACC this year, already making some noise. But let's make some noise with our buddy Jason Fitz. You can check him out over at Yahoo Sports, doing a phenomenal job there, covering both college football and the NFL. And in this case, I feel like we're doing a valuable service as a wellness check on Jason after the Davante Adams trade. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, well, I mean, what this is revolutionary. I've never said this in my years of a fan. Raiders in full rebuild mode. Who knew? Like, this is new. Like, and the funny thing is, rebuild mode isn't something apparently that you get better at, because teams that are constantly in rebuild mode constantly suck at rebuild mode. So it's this amazing thing that it's like golf. You think that you're going to get better the more you do it, but you don't. So yeah, here we go. It's all over. We're starting everything all over fresh. And, you know, glory be to God, that 3rd round pick that might be a 2nd rounder if everything breaks right sure is going to help the team for years to come. I hope you note my sarcasm.
Yes, sarcasm noted. The 3rd round pick will not become a 2nd round pick. Again, right. He has to be an all-pro. He's only played in 3 games, or he has to be on the roster for the AFC title game or Super Bowl. And the Jets, I don't think, are going to be at each. So I think it's going to be a 3rd rounder. Do you think this started, this was the ball rolling when the Raiders didn't get a quarterback of the future in the draft?
I think that had to be part of it, but here's the thing. I think if you look at their entire offseason, to be fair, the Raiders did a smart thing when they signed Gardner Minshew. They gave themselves an insurance plan because you didn't know how the draft was going to break. Now, multiple reports, and people told me as we were going into the drafts that the Raiders were aggressive. I heard from one person that the Raiders offered as much as 3 first-round draft picks to try and move up to get Jaden Daniels, and Washington said no. So when everybody says, well, they didn't get a quarterback, my answer to that is doesn't mean they didn't try. You can't make a team trade that's not interested in a trade. So if you were only really interested in Jaden, for example, and Jaden was unattainable, what are you supposed to do? By the time the Raiders picked, everybody was off the board. Nobody thought Michael Penix Jr. would go as high as he did. So if you look across the way the draft played out, I don't think the Raiders really could have done anything differently to address the quarterback position. My question is, if that's where this whole process was after the draft and you knew you were stuck with these 2 quarterbacks, why wait this long? What happened 4 weeks into the season? Because 2-2 is about where most people thought the Raiders would be. Like, there wasn't some epic fail of, well, this isn't what I thought. Bad quarterback play is sort of what you expected. So I don't know what changed.
Certainly, you're right. I think our expectation on the outside might have been that you never know with athlete brain and what you can convince yourself of inside the walls of an organization. My question now going forward, though, Fitz, is you're right. That was the setting we walked into the season knowing was the reality here. For a guy like Max Crosby now, though, does this change anything about his future? Because you mentioned rebuild for the Las Vegas Raiders. There's a desperate team in Detroit that I'm sure would love the services of a guy like Max and probably pony up a fair amount. Is he untouchable? Is he going to be there no matter what?
So I think he's untouchable. And part of this comes back to, I know I told you guys before, I didn't think Davante would get traded. I stand by the math on the logic. You can't trade Khalil Mack and Max Crosby in the same 10-year period and feel good about it as an organization. Max is the face of the Las Vegas Raiders, and especially with the team without a quarterback. He's the billboard. He's the culture. He's the personality. He had a big hand in hiring Antonio Pierce. Everybody's talked about this. Like, he went to Mark Davis and said, this is our guy. Like, he strongly, constantly says Raider Nation for life. I think Max deserves to be traded to a place where he can win football games, but I don't think he has any interest in it. I don't think Mark Davis has any interest in trading him. I don't think you can trade somebody that is the best player this generation has seen wear your colors. That's going to be a borderline Hall of Famer in my mind. I don't think you can trade him no matter what you're getting in return.
So that's what that hashtag means. Okay,
yes,
I had a lot of question about what that hashtag meant. I'm glad that I got the answer for it. Okay, that was helpful, Dad. Sorry for butting in there. I just needed to. No, this is almost a Pat McAfee college game day situation.
they can't trade Mac. God, they can't trade Max Crosby. I mean, the best player on the team. He's 27 years old. I mean, if you talk about a rebuild, that doesn't mean getting rid of your 27-year-old best player you have. You build around that. You don't get rid of that. I mean, that's ridiculous, though. I will say this is now the second receiver that you have, the one a while ago to a team. How does it feel? You traded Davante Adams, and a while ago you traded Amari Cooper as well to Cleveland.
We're going to leave out the Randy Moss to the Patriots, too. Like, receivers go to the Raiders just to get pissed off. That's what happens. Like,
are you guys good luck, Chuck?
Okay. I don't know. You know what? Maybe here's the what. Let me can I be a beacon of light for a second, though? Let me just remind everybody. 2 years ago, the conversation in Houston was no coach is ever going to want to work for this ownership group after what they've gone through, and nobody wants to play there. And then all of a sudden, they get the right guy with the right quarterback, conversation changes. Look at this year. If you go back a few months ago, the conversation was, when will Washington ever get it right? And now, I think for the first time in my entire broadcast career, we've spent months only talking about the football in Washington and nothing else. Like, that is revolutionary. So I think if you're the Raiders, you don't trade Max Crosby because you have to have Max Crosby because he's the billboard. But you do look at it and say, okay, the one thing we got to figure out, and I don't know how to do it, is to get a quarterback. And if you can find the quarterback in this year's draft that you love, your belief is going to be that will make everything better. Unfortunately, you happen to be going into a draft where the quarterback position is not giving you the best player. So it's a conundrum to be stuck in. But if you're Mark Davis, you justify keeping Max Crosby because you know that all you need is a quarterback in the draft and everything changes.
Do you think Antonio Pierce is the guy that they let pick that quarterback, though? Because that's the other thing I found myself asking questions about is there was very public back and forth in the media that didn't sound overly lovey-dovey. There was calling out players for the business decisions early on in a season that, to your point, has probably been about as successful as most people realistically expected given the limitations of the roster, especially at quarterback. But so far, have they seen enough from Antonio Pierce? Because one and done as an NFL head coach, especially one who came off the interim tag, is not something wholly unseen through the history of this league even recently.
Yeah, but when you're already paying the buyout remaining for John Gruden and you're already paying the buyout remaining for Josh McDaniels, at some point you got to keep somebody. I think realistically, if this season continues to go inconsistently as it is right now, what's real is that Tom Brady, the new partial owner of the team, and Tom Telesco will rip away any power and any conversation in any way and say, hey, you are just going to do this one thing, which is basically already what AP does. Those two men will pick the next quarterback. So Brady and Telesco will pick the quarterback. You just got to hope that Telesco, strikes gold twice, gets himself a Justin Herbert out of this thing. And you got to hope that Tom Brady is better than, Michael Jordan at player evaluation like that. There's still a bunch of unknowns in that process, but I think those two men make the decision.
Yeah, we brought up the fact of John Elway, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, couldn't find that next quarterback. So it's not a guarantee if you were a Hall of Fame player that you're going to be able to pick the next one. Who do you think, which receiver helps their team more, Davante to the Jets or Amari Cooper to the Bills?
Here's the thing. Everybody says I'm a Jets hater. I'm not a Jets hater. I'm a realist when it comes to the way that offense looks. The Jets were not devoid of a number one caliber wide receiver. Like, we can't suddenly move the goalposts. Like Garrett Wilson coming into the season, some people thought would hit the triple crown of leading the league in yardage, catches, and touchdowns. Like, there was a lot of love for Garrett Wilson. I'm watching Garrett Wilson be massively misused in this offense. In fact, if you look at the depth of target and the way they've just sort of force-fed the ball, there's no plan for it. There's no great, oh my God, look at this great scheme for Garrett Wilson. It's just, let's shove the ball into Garrett to keep him happy. I don't think adding Davante suddenly gives this offense a weapon because, frankly, this offense hasn't figured out how to utilize their weapons and their offensive line is bad. Now, the Bills, on the other hand, have figured out how to get everybody to eat. But I do think it's realistic to look at Buffalo and say, you know what? They need that guy on 3rd and 5. They need that guy on 3rd and 7, right? They don't have that guy. Dalton Kincaid, I think a lot of people internally believed would develop into a wide receiver type tight end. That really hasn't happened. So I think Amari has a bigger impact to the Buffalo Bills. The only thing I'd say about Amari is, can we all admit that Amari giveth and taketh away? Like, one week he'll catch 200 yards worth of balls, and the next week he'll jog into routes. So the question is, can the Bills and Josh Allen engage Amari week in and week out? That's a challenge for every team that's had.
You know what? I think the Bills uniquely qualified based on recent history as a team figuring out how to keep wide receivers that may be a little bit upset at times with their role engaged in the offense enough to be productive. See the entire back and forth. We don't know what went on behind closed doors, but we know Stephon Diggs didn't always seem like the happiest guy there, and they found a way to make that work. And I think especially true given the need going on there. But you're right, Fitz. He is a guy that, the drops, the effort have all been a problem. I'd imagine it's going to be incredibly motivating to not be in the Cleveland Browns building anymore at this point. It seems like that is a baseline for human happiness, probably a pretty easy place to start, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I will also say I was working with someone that knew Amari well when we were doing the morning show together. That was a frequent guest, knew Amari well. And I said to him one day, hey, man, why is Amari Cooper so inconsistent? And he laughed and he said, if I knew that, I'd probably still be a coach in the NFL. And the joke, as much as we laughed about it in the moment, the one thing that he said that I'll never forget is sometimes things were said or done in the locker room that coaches knew nothing about. And all of a sudden, Amari was out. For the week, he was out. He was checked out and you couldn't get him to check in. And if you look at the way that his career has gone, it's been everywhere. So here's where I think you're right. Josh Allen, as a personality, is definitely the type of guy that's warm and fuzzy and just, going to bring some of those good feels. They just got to make sure that they've got a real control on that in the locker room.
Yeah, and I think that's the quarterback dynamics in both these teams are fascinating with that, because Buffalo has put everything on Josh in terms of, hey, we expect you to be the driver of this offense, but now here's a little bit of relief. In New York with the Jets, they've given Aaron Rodgers everything, and I've seen plenty of Jets fans point out, it's like, all right, we got the biggest prized possession, the guy that maybe outside of Jordy Nelson you vibed the best with of any receiver you've ever thrown to. Now it's on Aaron. Like, there is an Aaron Rodgers conversation that's going to come if the wins don't immediately follow this, and his play doesn't also dramatically jump going forward. So lots of interesting there. Fitz, there was something else I was curious about with you. You worked in Nashville locally for a while there, and in part of that, covering a lot of the local teams, the Titans, the Predators, all of that stuff. I forget if you guys were the flagship station or not, but what did you make of the situation that went on with 105.3 yesterday and Jerry Jones in Dallas, basically threatening the jobs of some of the on-air hosts that he was on with that day, talking about some of the missteps that organization's made?
We were the flagship for the Nashville Predators, and I'll never forget one day my co-host and I were doing the morning show on the ESPN radio affiliate, and the Preds had won the night before. And we were talking about some of the things in the win that didn't look good. And I will never forget one of the highest people in the organization literally called into the show. And the rule was, if he called in, he had to get on air. We could not say no to the call. And we got on air, and we got absolutely tongue lashed live on radio for not being positive enough about the team after a game, because his kids were in the car and he didn't appreciate our tone. And when we got off air, by that point, he'd gone to our programming director, he'd gone to our boss, and he had absolutely just ripped the show apart because we were the flagship for the Preds and it was a win. And I will never forget that. There have been times in my life, if I'm being fully transparent, that I have considered working with my beloved Raiders. And one of the biggest reasons I haven't taken that plunge, people always ask me all the time, is because I don't want to be in a situation where somebody tells me what I can or cannot say in any way, shape, or form. One of the great things about the things I do with the Raiders now is that I can say what I want, because if the Raiders turn around and say, up yours, I can turn around and say, that's just fine. One of the most difficult things about working for a flagship, Mike, is that we all know that when you work for a flagship, man, they will tell you, they will tell your bosses, they will tell you, like, you cannot be genuine on a flagship. I think it was inappropriate for Jerry, but I also think that when you're at 105.3, man, you know the gig, you know who's paying the bills, and you know that at some point you will have crossed the line.
Did your bosses tell you to ease up? Did
Yep.
they try and influence what you would say?
100%. They said that we got to make sure that we're doing. They don't tell you to ease up. They tell you, hey, man, remember, we're a big partnership here. We want everybody to be on board. Or they'll say, like, we want to make sure that we're all hearing the same message. Like, that's what they say. And then all of a sudden, if somebody doesn't get that message, they're eventually off the show. So they find clever, creative ways to tell you. But yeah, this is normal life for a flagship station, for most flagship stations.
Thankfully, the publicity around this one, I think, will create some insulation for the job security for everyone involved, as now everyone has been privy to local politics going national. You guys can hear the perspective of Jason Fitz, unfiltered, over at Yahoo Sports. Check him out on the Yahoo Sports College Football Power Hour, Yahoo Sports Inside coverage as well. Always great stuff from our foremost Raiders fan. Fitzy, you're the best, man. Appreciate it.
Maybe someday we'll talk about a good team. That'd be so much fun.
No. Hey. Don't worry.
See you, man.
Don't get your hopes up for things like that.
No,
Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, but it's also the most dangerous drug known to man. Coming up next, though, plenty of hope for the folks in Dallas. Why SMU and Rhett Lashley have them believing year one in the ACC about what's possible. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. The new AP poll has dropped, and the usual suspects are in the top 10, as you can guess. But we have a new entry to the poll. The 5-1 SMU Mustangs have entered the chat. The fellas caught up with head coach Rhett Lashley to talk about the great start to the season in a brand new conference.
All right, college football season rolling along. Let's talk to one team that has joined a new conference, as is par for the course this season, made a big splash right away. Rhett Lashley, the head coach at SMU, kind enough to join us now. Coach, the Mustangs are 5-1. You guys are ranked in the AP poll. I'd say every morning's a good morning for you right now. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. It's been an exciting first half of the season for us to, just to be able to compete and prove at least that we belong early on. And so been really proud of our guys, the way they played the last 3 games. And, now we're coming off a bye. We got the second half of our season, but it's been really exciting times here in Dallas.
Coach, I want to go back to kind of the beginning for you when you first took a job at Arkansas as a G under Gus Malzahn, who will coach you in kind of followed him along the way. But after you were there for a year in Arkansas, you and your brother-in-law started a magazine, a high school sports magazine for a couple of years. Were you thinking while you were doing that magazine about getting back into coaching, or were you already like leaving coaching after a year in Arkansas?
It's a great story that almost 20 years ago now, but no, I all but ended my college coaching career. To your point, I played for Gus Malzahn. He was my high school coach.
Right.
And then I played for Houston Nutt at Arkansas. And when I graduated, Gus got hired to be Houston's OC. So I was a GA in 2006. We had Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, all those guys, Peyton Hillis. And we actually won 10 games and played for the SEC championship game. And to make a long story as short as I can, Gus takes the OC job at Tulsa with Todd Graham. And I was going to go with him. As a matter of fact, I drove over there the day with him. He did his press conference. I was probably 23 years old. I was going to get to be a GA still, but I was going to coach the running backs. So, it was a no-brainer, and we went over there for one day, and then we were making the 2-hour drive back to Northwest Arkansas that night. And I can't explain it to you. I don't know if you've had times in your life where there was just some gut feeling I had that this was not right. And I told Gus that night, he wasn't real happy. He said, think about it. And I did. For about 2 or 3 days, I labored over that decision in a high level because I knew it was the right decision. Logically, it made sense. It was a great opportunity to get in. But something in me was just like, not no, but absolutely not. And so I chose not to go. And about 2 weeks later, realized I had to figure something out to do to make some money. I was engaged. I was getting married in 3 months. Not exactly the way you would draw it up, but and even to make it funnier, about 2 or 3 weeks later, Gus called me and said, hey, well, since you won't go with me, I need you to come meet me up at Shiloh, which was my high school. Meet this guy that I'm going to take with me to be my GA now, since you won't go. And I walked into the room and Mike Norvell's sitting there. And so Mike goes with Gus to Tulsa. All right. And then I did with my brother-in-law. We started a sports marketing company that was already started out of Tulsa. It was like a franchise situation. We did it in Arkansas called High School Sports Magazine. I did that for 22 months, and about 6 months in, I knew I needed to get into coaching again. But I didn't know if I ever get the chance. And fortunately, when Gus got the job in Auburn in 2009, he called me, and I was there, I think, before he was.
So, you got to see Mike a little while ago this season, obviously. Yeah. When you see him every time, do you remind him, hey, where's my Christmas card? Does he send you an edible arrangement every year for that? How's that work?
I think Mike's done just fine for himself. Mike had just got done playing at UCA, Central Arkansas, and someone connected him with Gus. But it's just funny how those stories happen. Everything happens for a reason that put him on his journey and me on mine. But yeah, that definitely happened.
Well, what a journey it's been, leading you now to an incredible start for your first year in the ACC. What are the things that have made you guys start off the season as well as you have?
It's a great question. I think, we went into the season with two quarterbacks that we really believed in that helped us win a lot of games last year. And to some degree, it was a good problem to have, but we played them both the first three games, and at some point we had to have consistency. So we made a decision, and our team has really rallied behind that, and those guys have both handled it great. So I think that kind of stabilized things, allowed us to have an identity on offense and have consistency as a team. But I think the biggest thing that has allowed us to have success is we're a physical football team. And so, we take pride in it. We've talked about it, and we don't take for granted that just because we've been physical so far this season doesn't mean we will be Saturday. But when you make a move into a power conference, especially in the trenches, I mean, it's different week in, week out. And then a school like SMU that, our history is long, and we won't get into all that. But even in the last 5 years, we've been known as a school that scores a lot of points. But until last year, we didn't play defense. We started playing defense and being physical last year, and it won us a conference championship. And our guys have carried that into this year. And our formula is real simple. I love to throw the ball. I love to throw it deep. I love to play fast, but we're going to run the football and stop the run. We got to win the turnover battle and win the explosive plays. And so far this year, we've been able to hang in there in the lines of scrimmage. And I think that's been the difference.
Is that something that you guys focused on extra this offseason, knowing you're getting ready to make the jump? Like, how do you, if at all, change the way you go about getting ready for a season, knowing you're getting ready to make the jump like you did?
No, it's a great question. I think it started before last season. We went out and we signed guys from the portal to play big-time defensive football and really tried to build around the O-line, D-lines. And at the American Conference level, we had the best. And so we won. Well, then we had the new challenge of coming into this league and not only needing really good players in the trenches, but depth. The biggest deal is when you roll your second D-line out there can't be a big drop-off. Or when a guy gets banged up on the O-line, there can't be a big drop-off. So 13 of our 20 transfers we brought in were O&D linemen last year. And it was very intentional to do the best we could in a 10-month window to prepare for the 10-week grind of a Power 4 schedule. So I think that, coupled with just our coaches, the way we practice, we have a very NFL environment. We don't beat the guys up, but when we do go, we're physical. And Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we do half line and we do team run, and we get after it on Tuesday and Wednesday so we can try to play that way on Saturdays.
So you talked about the success you had last year in the group of five, and now you go to the Power 4, and you're a coach, you've been around a while, but you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds who are now in the Power 4 and seeing success. So do you have to kind of keep them down and, not read the clippings or such?
Yeah, I think that's our challenge right now because, we had a bye week after 3 big wins, which we were playing good. And so when you're playing good, you want to keep playing. At the same time, the physicality, we needed a week to kind of heal up. But then you have a chance to kind of relax, and human nature starts to hear, oh, your guys are ranked now. And, like you're saying, hey, y'all played well. And that's great. They've earned that. But what kind of maturity do we have to understand that we're chasing a standard that we've set for ourselves? And we're at the halfway point in the season. How many teams are 5-1, 4-2, 6-0, and half of them are going to fall off. And so our challenge is, can we, in the middle of our season, stay strong and maybe even improve? It's something that we're trying to, get across to them the best that we can. And I think that's the biggest challenge for us in these next couple of weeks.
Well, as you mentioned, you've had some big-time performers. You talked about portaling along the lines of scrimmage, but Rashard Smith and what he's done for you guys in the running back room. Kevin Jennings been a big part of that rushing attack as well since he took over. And he said after you guys beat Louisville, he said this is a season where we performed well, and mentioned the ACC championship. Is that something you guys talk openly about in the building, even in year one here, of trying to go out and believing you can accomplish that?
No, we don't talk about it on a weekly basis or anything. And we talked about at the beginning of the season, just like we did last year, that, we kind of put the map up of this is where we're trying to get to. And then you try to break it down to how you get there. The way our season breaks in, we really have 4 quarters, 3, 3, 3, and 3 of our games. And we went 2-1 in the first quarter. We went 3-0 in the second. So the Stanford game's our first game of the third quarter. And we're just trying to win the quarters of our season. And, I think our guys did a good job of that last year. Hopefully that'll carry over this year. There's nothing wrong with knowing the goal and where you would love to get, but you got to stay present, and that's super hard. And people call it coach speak. They call it whatever they want. Those of you who've been on a team know you have to do that. You can't get ahead of yourself, and you can't live in the past. I got no problem with Kevin or anyone mentioning that. That's great. I mean, if you're playing, that's your goal. And we put ourselves in position in mid-October to play meaningful games that give us an opportunity to do that. So, but no, we talk about this week's opponent, and we talk about the standard that we set so far this year. We've played at a level a couple times that proved we can beat anybody. So that's the standard that we're chasing each week. It doesn't matter the opponent. That's the standard that we're chasing, and that's what we got to do this week.
You've played the position, coached the position for a long time. You mentioned having two quarterbacks and now getting to the point where Kevin's at the helm of this thing. In understanding the way you call plays with him in mind, what does he do well that's allowed your guys' offense to perform the way it has in the last few weeks?
Well, what he's done really well the last 3 weeks is he's been himself, which is aggressive and explosive, but he's valued the football. I think he's got 1 turnover in those 3 games. That's a big deal. He helps us make a defense defend the whole field. He opens the entire field up for us. He obviously helps our run game. We don't beat him up running it, but he can sure hurt you with his legs. He can extend plays in the passing game. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly, and helps us avoid, some sacks and create critical situations. And, he can push the ball down the field. He helped our offense develop an identity that does what we want to do, which is, again, make a defense defend the field horizontally and vertically, and gives us balance in the run game. So that's what he's been able to do so far for us.
So going back a little bit to just preparing for the next opponent, breaking your season 3 games at a time. This is the first of the next 3 against Stanford, but you beat a ranked Louisville team, and now you go up against a 2-4 Stanford. So you coach them to play each game individually, but do you show them anything external, like maybe, hey, look at Alabama beat Georgia and then lost to Vanderbilt? I mean, do you use examples like that for your players?
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's a fine line, right? You want to be honest and make sure you don't not address the obvious. To your point, 2 weeks ago when 6 teams in the top 12 lost or whatever, and Vanderbilt and Alabama is an obvious one. I think at the same time, we want us focusing on positive things and on what we need to do to prepare to play well. It's easy to see. I mean, Stanford went on the road and beat a 5-1 Syracuse team. They took Clemson 3 quarters deep. One of the games they lost, their quarterback didn't play. So, and the way they shrink the game in terms of time of possession and limit possessions, almost like a Navy does, creates a challenge for you and going across the country. So we do. We try not to overdo it, but we definitely do. Because it's real. To your point, 18 to 22, 23-year-old kids, you never know what you're going to get week to week. And you don't know all the things going on in their lives. And so to get a group of guys like that to consistently have solid performance is a great challenge. That's why we coach. So, yeah.
Coach, big picture on that, just sticking with it. Again, you've been around so many different parts and levels of football. We've seen so many upsets like that this year. We know players between the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. There's so many different factors weighing on them and on programs now. Do you think those things play a factor in the amount of upsets we've seen and the parity overall in the sport right now?
I think without question, we've taken the greatest team sport in the world, and it still is, but we've created it such an individual environment within it. And it's not the kid's fault. I mean, but when you have a quarterback opting out of a top 25 team that's undefeated, what are we doing? And so, and the why and all those things, I don't know. It's none of my business. It's just, there's a lot that kids are dealing with these days that they didn't used to have to. Yes, they're making money. That's fine. And all these other things that are on the surface positive, but with all that stuff comes a lot of responsibility and other issues that are maybe unintended. So I think there does seem to be a lot of parity in college football this year. And I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
There's no doubt about it, but it's created a really exciting environment for fans watching, and certainly you guys have found a way to navigate everything, all the changes in the sport, including the new conference, to a lot of success through the first half of the season, Coach. We really appreciate the time. Best of luck as you get into the third quarter and fourth quarter of this season. We're excited to watch Mustang football. Change is the only constant in college football. Coming up next, though, why one NFL team apparently believes that same thing about their quarterback situation. Could Russell Wilson really be the starter for the Steelers this week? We'll tap into that next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Guys, a team in the NFL with 4 wins, a team that surprised us, frankly, to start the season, is making a change at quarterback. What? Why? Take a listen to this.
Justin has been really good, and we've been really good at times, but not to be confused with great. Man, this is a competitive league, man. We're trying to position ourselves to be that team. And we got a player with talent who hadn't had an opportunity to play, so we're going to potentially explore those things. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what Justin has done or has not done.
Guys, what do you think about this move? Kind of seems like, again, I never played in the NFL, but it kind of seems like the chemistry with teams, the locker room, all of this can be like, it can be very volatile when you change one element.
It certainly can. My initial reaction to this, Dad, was actually sort of on the opposite end. We can talk about the football of it, but people were certainly questioning Mike Tomlin, I think some in the aftermath of this statement. That's what leadership looks like. Like a guy who understands the decision he is about to make may not be popular, but believes that it will be for the betterment of the people involved that he's in charge of. That's a difficult thing to do. And if anyone has got the cachet and the built-up equity to be able to make a decision like that, at this point it should certainly be Mike Tomlin. Now, it comes after maybe the most volatile year of his coaching career, where we did have questions about his job for the first time in my lifetime towards the end of last season. So maybe that's not true as much around Pittsburgh, but I do look at that and realize that that's an incredibly difficult thing to say. And so he must really believe that there's some upside to it, knowing that Mike Tomlin, the bottom line is winning around there. The standard is the standard.
Yeah, I don't know about the move, but obviously Mike Tomlin's been doing this a long time, and he's been doing it successfully for a long time. I think he feels now you get a little bit of a trade-off, right? Because Justin Fields has 5 touchdown passes. It's not a high volume passing offense. How much better of a passing offense will it be with Russell Wilson? Because it's not like they have a plethora of receivers. They have George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, wide receiver and tight end, with 26 and 22 receptions. Next closest is your running back, Najee Harris, with 14. So you're really kind of a 2-man receiving crew here. And do you have the players and the depth to make it a passing offense? Can Russell Wilson improve the passing that much to offset the running that Justin Fields does? Justin Fields was rushed for 5 touchdowns, and he can escape trouble. They're playing the Jets. The Jets, I think, are 5th in the league in sacks. They're number 2 in the league of giving up passing yards, only 148 yards a game. So do we think Russell Wilson is going to come in and pass on the Jets? I don't know if the get is worth the give, Mike, in all honesty. I don't know if there'd be that much difference.
No, I would agree. And I understand we've said this since before the season, right? Neither of these quarterbacks are owed anything by this current regime. They are not both highly paid. It did not cost a lot to acquire them in both the different ways that they were brought over to this team. And so if you wanted to tinker with the quarterbacks, there's nothing that says, hey, you can't throw Russell Wilson out there, and if it doesn't work, immediately put Justin Fields back in there. Now, you maybe worry about disrupting rhythms and the thing that Jesse talked about, any of the continuity that you've built up, but at the end of the day, you don't have to worry in my mind about the egos here, because no one involved should be able to have an ego at this point. Russell Wilson is on the back half of a career that's watched him suffer great public shame on the field in the last couple years. Justin Fields, a former number 1 overall pick that ended up with another team, so clearly it didn't go perfectly for him. Everyone is incentivized to continue to put their best foot forward and ignore hurt feelings that maybe someone with a higher draft status or a higher contract amount could have in those situations. But I'm with you. I just don't know if at this point in his career, Russell Wilson presents a decided advantage there. You look at Justin Fields so far this season. When it comes to quarterback rating, 15th overall in the league. When it comes to completion percentage over expectation, 10th overall in the league. When it comes to EPA per dropback, 14th in the league. He's been a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, and I just don't know if Russell Wilson, especially given the offensive line, the protection issues for a team that's been beat up along that position and already had to shuffle some guys this season, I don't know if what he brings them supersedes his ability to go and beat what the protection will allow him to do.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, they play the Jets, who have 20 sacks. Then they play the Giants, who have 26 sacks. The one thing that Russell Wilson has not been and cannot be tested on, I don't care how much you practice and run around like you think you're testing your calf, it's not live. You're not getting hit in practice. You're not running for your life in practice. You are not putting torque and pressure on those feet and ankles like you are in practice. You're just not, because it's not live. So that's the other thing. It's really going to stress the calf, and I guess we'll find out what kind of shape it's in. But I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze to start to mess with. And listen, I get Mike Tomlin he understands they're 4-2, but sees kind of the future. Sees what you have to do to win in this league. Obviously, you have to have a really good defense, which they have. You have to run the ball, which they can do, but you have to be able to pass the ball. And it is the unknown. We saw Russell Wilson struggle at times and then perform toward the end better in Denver in passing the ball. But that's really what you're looking for, right? You're making the move to Russell Wilson to improve your passing game, but it will take away from your quarterback's ability to move and run. So again, I don't know if it's worth the move, but to your point, and you're exactly right, they don't owe either quarterback a thing. He can flip-flop week to week. I know he wouldn't want to do that. He shouldn't do that for the timing and everything, but for what they owe these quarterbacks, which is nothing, he can use them as he pleases.
He certainly can, and it's a matter of what they've seen behind closed doors. Going back to an offseason where we know the backdrop, it's sort of like when you have a play that gets challenged in football or any sport, and the call on the field is what it is, so you've got to have indisputable video evidence to overturn that call. Russell Wilson was the guy that they had penciled in as the starter all offseason, all through training camp until the injury popped up. And so in their minds, it's did they see indisputable video evidence on the tape from Justin Fields that he absolutely needs to be the starter for them? And the answer to that is probably no, Dad. Like, it's been a mixed bag of things. It's been up and downs. Even amidst some of the rushing help, he's also put the ball on the mat a little bit in that factor of the game. And maybe for a head coach in Mike Tomlin, who still rightly views the defense as the strength of this team, someone that's going to be in there to maybe take a bit better care of the football. And if they can expand on that passing game, it's like the NBA, 3s versus 2. Maybe that represents at least enough of a potential for upside that he needs to visit. And that part, I can't fault him again, given this dynamic. It's one of the most unique quarterback dynamics we've seen in quite some time. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And as far as Fields, he has 1 interception and 4 fumbles. Now, he hasn't lost any of the fumbles, but he still fumbled. So where you're fumbling in the backfield, you're losing yards, and it hurts the drive. And you do have, when I say the unknown of Russell Wilson's been in the league a long time, and you kind of see what he is, but he's an unknown in this offense, right? He has not had a chance to run this offense in live counting games. So there's the kind of the wondering of what could he do? Maybe he could improve the passing game and bring a spark to this team that would give it a better chance, even though they are 4-2 and right there near the top, to actually make a legitimate run by having a passing game. So maybe it's going to take putting Russell Wilson in there and comparing the two then. Isn't enough of an improvement in the passing game to the detriment of the running game?
And like you said, I know people are pointing to the record, but you also do get to make that calculated risk with a little bit of a cushion right now. You're tied for first in the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens, fully understanding that the way you're built, especially on offense, isn't anywhere close to the same. And so maybe this is the time to take that gamble while you've got a little bit of that cushion and go to work there now. I just have a hard time getting the visual out of my head, Dad. We talked about it during the preseason. but watching what the Buffalo Bills defensive front did to that Steelers offensive line and how Russell Wilson got beat up, even in that limited sample size, to now have a less mobile version of him in theory behind an offensive line that I don't know is markedly better, gives me a little bit of pause with how this is going to play out. Coming up next, though, we will finish up the show the way we always do with this, that, the third, and a visual in the Major League Baseball postseason that a lot of people have been waiting for in the Bronx. Next on GoJo and Golic. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of your day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you can't miss us live there or any of our great guests, or can't see us live, I should say, you can check those out wherever you get our podcast. Thank you to Falcons wide receiver Drake London, SMU head coach Rhett Lashley, and our buddy Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. If you missed any of those, get them where you get the podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. This, that, and the third is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Knockaround Sunglasses, your go-to for polarized sunglasses that aren't going to break the bank here. You can head to knockaround.com and use promo code GoJo Golic. That's GoJo Golic to pick up your new pair of polarized shades. Dad is still rocking the Shark Week ones there. I am still rocking the U.S. national team ones. I need to go and sub out this pair. They're the ones I have on the desk over here when we do the read. Jesse has gone with, I believe, hot pink version of the Pit Sharks, Pit Vipers, whatever people call them, for that version of Knockaround. So, Jesse, how do you feel? Do you feel you've gone from what we established as sort of like 80s villains skiing down the slopes? Now do I feel more like someone there on holiday on those slopes? You're a character in the background that's there maybe for a bachelorette party that just happens to witness the gruesome beginning to whatever the plot is.
Right. I can't ski, but I'm here for the opera. That's the vibe.
Ooh, yeah. Big après ski sunnies right there for sure. So love to see that. Dad, do you have any idea what après ski is?
No idea. None. And I wouldn't even try and fake it like I did. I have no clue.
It's what you do after skiing. It's where you sit in front of the fire and you have a drink and stuff. And some people just choose to only indulge in the après part and not actually do the skiing.
Oh, see, I didn't know there was a word for it, because all my life I've never been a skier, and all my life when asked to ski, I always said I would just rather sit by the fire and have a drink. Now there's a word for it.
Big après guy,
An après
senior.
ski girly.
Big après guy.
Is this word been around for a long time? Has it been this for decades when I could have been using it?
I think.
Or they just make this up?
I couldn't tell you.
I think it's French. I would guess it's French.
It's definitely French. For after?
I'll still say sitting around the fire having a drink, because I don't think a lot of people know what après means.
Oh, they do. They do.
In my age group?
Well.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
You know what, Dad? Now you can spread the gospel of après the next time you're at a Notre Dame alumni event. Some of your class or mates are around. You can go après game, and you guys can go have a beer at the linebacker and call it that.
No chance. No chance I'll use that around guys my age. They'll mock me.
Come on, man.
There you go. Well, you know what? We'll see what everyone wanted to do après the first Aaron Judge home run of this postseason as we get to this. Last night, the Yankees get another win in the MLB postseason as the playoffs roll along there. And Aaron Judge finally goes yard, Dad. The Ghosts were pulling that one to center field, according to Aaron Judge. He homers as they take game 2 and go up 2-0 on the Guardians, 6-3 in that win. So a big one there. And, Dad, you knew eventually had to come. Aaron Judge came off yet another prolific season, hitting the ball out of the park here. We've talked about how small these postseason sample sizes are, and so good to see him. If you're a Yankees fan, get on the board, and I think a general fan of baseball, since the things getting talked about with him in the postseason performance so far probably ventured a little bit into the absurd.
No, I don't care that he hit a home run. I didn't want him to hit a home run, as I'm rooting for my hometown Cleveland Guardians. They were down 4-2 before he gets the 2-run shot, makes it 6-2. Cleveland added 1 in the 9th to make it 6-3. But yeah, I don't care about Aaron Judge hitting a home run in this series. I don't want him to. I don't care.
He doesn't care.
It's my favorite part of the postseason, where Dad all of a sudden accidentally taps into the Cleveland roots here. The rest of the season couldn't be bothered here, but now in the playoffs, now all of a sudden he cares again.
It's my team. It's my Guardians.
Yeah. We won't have Dad go down and itemize the roster just yet. The Yankees had won 4 of their 5 playoff games so far this season, with Judge basically contributing little to nothing. He had walked 5 times, managed just 2 hits and 15 at-bats this postseason before Tuesday. And so in one night, he tripled his previous RBI output, and the 3-run hit from Gleyber Torres and the 5 hits in the bottom 3 in the lineup made up for the tough outing. Garrett Cole, not the best night from him after what we had seen the last time he had been out there. Both pitchers, quite honestly, got beat up a little early. You had to make some changes pretty early on and start to go to the well for both managers. So an off kind of night there, and the fact that the Yankees still found a way to win and now have Judge maybe seeing the ball go through the basket once unlocked for the rest of the postseason. A huge win in a lot of different ways for the Yankees in this one.
Yeah, I don't know if Cleveland's going to have a shot in this. Cleveland used 8 pitchers last night. Yeah. 8. Just to try and piecemeal this thing together. And it doesn't look good at this point. For my Cleveland
especially with the schedules going back there now and how quickly they're going to have to play these games. I do think that's going to start to add up. So Dad's Guardians may unfortunately be in a tough situation between a rock and a hard place. Jesse, let's talk about a team that neither Dad or I are a fan of right now. USC found its way in the new money game into a very interesting situation before this Penn State loss.
Yeah, so USC has a thing, okay, where you can pay to run out with the team. For a small fee, it costs between $1,450 and $1,800 depending on the game. And guys, get this, there are no rules, okay? Well, there might be after this. So this Penn State fan did it Saturday in PSU gear. Ran out with the USC team in PSU gear. Pretty funny, but hey, if the check cashes, I have a feeling they don't really care.
How can you do that? I mean, all that says to me is you can't get enough USC fans to pay to do that when you're taking in the opponent's fans. I mean, that's crazy. And I get grabbing money if you can grab the money, but I mean, wouldn't you always want it to be a USC fan?
They might not have told them. They probably weren't like, hey, I'm going to run out in PSU gear because I'm not a USC fan. They probably just found this and they just paid for it, and apparently there's no vetting process.
I was going to say, I do wonder what that's
true.
like, because even in situations where, you've got the family ticket section, and a lot of times it's sort of unspoken or sometimes has to be said implicitly, where you've got to tell people, hey, you might have friends that are fans or family that are fans of the opposing team. You can't wear their gear if you're going to sit in our family section because it'd be a bad look. Some people have still done that. In this case, I wonder how much they do bet because the check's still cashing, but it brings up a good point. Is it worse that USC has this visual of someone else in Penn State gear running out of the tunnel? It wasn't at the same time as the team. You saw on the GoPro footage there were other USC fans in the area, so he was one in a group of many. Or is it worse that this guy now, because he's officially become a USC donor, is going to continue to get all that email and all that literal actual mail? The worst bet I ever was a part of with Macon from the Greenlight podcast over the Notre Dame Virginia lacrosse game led to them winning and me having to donate to USC scholarship or University of Virginia scholarship fund. So now I get emails and paper mail from them all the damn time, and it's the worst. So this guy may have bitten off more than he could chew, which is a good segue into the third for us. Jesse, let's get to the third here. A new listing in Las Vegas after Davante Adams' departure.
Yeah, so Taco Bell having a viral boon right now. Now, Davante Adams has appeared in multiple commercials for them, and one of them was one where there was like a fake Taco Bell in his house. So with the trade and cross-country move, Taco Bell put up a fake listing for his house, complete with the Taco Bell in there. And it says, the luxurious property comes equipped with a full-time employee, Todd, who will tend to your every Taco Bell need. Thanks, Todd.
I mean, show me the price. Let's talk.
It says, let's see, price upon request, so we can't afford it.
Yeah. If you could have any type of food place in your house, what would it be?
Chick-fil-A open on Sundays.
It would be Taco Bell for me.
I guess you could control the hours.
It would be Taco Bell for you?
It would be Taco Bell?
What about you,
It would be. This would save me the extra step of having to order it while I'm drunk on the way home.
I might go Waffle House.
A variety of options.
Yeah, I mean the fast casual, a little bit of a different experience there.
I'm a breakfast guy, so it would be a breakfast place, and Waffle House about as quick and easy as can be.
Yeah, that's fair.
Waffle House would be the best one if we were going to do sit-down restaurants in there. At GoJo and Golic, if you could have a restaurant in your home, what would it be? These are certainly all great options here. No wrong answers and a bunch of delicious choices here. We hope that you think that this show is a delicious choice in the diet of things that you consume. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.